Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Playing with Fire, the true story of a nurse, her husband, and a marriage turned fatal, by John Glatt. Narrated by Shaun Grindell. Under American law, a convicted defendant is entitled to appeal his or her conviction in an effort to overturn the jury's finding of guilt. Shelly Michael's appeal has been denied by the West Virginia Supreme Court, but she has still the option of challenging her conviction by petitioning a federal court to grant a writ of habeas corpus. As of going to press, no such petition has been filed. I wanted that picture-perfect traditional American family. Shelly Michael, 2006. To be buried while alive is, beyond question, the most terrific of those extremes which has ever fallen to the lot of mere mortality. Edgar Allan Poe, The Premature Burial. Prologue. It had been a long night on the neonatal ward of Ruby Memorial Hospital, and respiratory therapist Shaun was looking forward to a good sleep. But as he was finishing up a 12-hour shift, things suddenly got busy, so he stayed on an extra 45 minutes. When I clocked out, it was late, he remembered. It was close to 8 o'clock. There was a heavy rain and fog as he came out of the hospital's front entrance, still wearing scrubs, but it was unseasonably warm for November, with temperatures later reaching a near-record 60 degrees. As 37-year-old who also was a volunteer fireman, had that Tuesday off, he planned to sleep in the Star City Fire Department's bunker room, to be on call in an emergency. But first he drove home to shower and change into his day clothes. Lived at 574 Killarney Drive, in the prestigious Suncrest section of Morgantown, West Virginia, just about a mile away from the hospital. By 8:10 a.m. he was reversing his Dodge Ram truck into his driveway. It was still drizzling when I got out of my vehicle and smelled something burning, he recalled. It had the odor of a house on fire. From his experience as a firefighter, Alt could easily distinguish the smell of a simple chimney fire from building materials like insulation and furniture. He recognized this as a house fire. His first concern was that his own house was burning, so he slowly walked around its perimeter, inspecting it from all sides. Then, satisfied it was not on fire, he stood in his driveway, looking around for any smoke in the neighborhood. He saw nothing burning, but as a precaution he called a firefighter friend to see if any fires had been reported in Suncrest, leaving a message when the call went to voicemail. Then he went into his house to shower and change. But when he came out at about 8:20 a.m., he could still smell burning. After taking another look around and still not seeing anything, he got into his truck and pulled out of his driveway, turning left onto Killarney Drive. At the top of the hill, he came to a stop sign at the intersection with Eastern Avenue. As he slowed down, he saw his neighbor Shelly Michael's distinctive silver Ford Expedition backing out of her driveway. She turned left in his direction and stopped, directly facing him across the four-way stop. Alt was well acquainted with the smartly dressed, attractive young mother of two, the second wife of successful entrepreneur Jimmy Michael. Shaun and Jimmy had studied respiratory therapy together, staying in touch after his friend had started his own home medical business. They now lived 4 doors away from each other and often chatted. But Shelly was different. Alt knew her from Ruby Memorial, where she was a pediatric nurse practitioner, but he was always very wary around her, as she could be very moody. There were times when you didn't know whether you should approach her, he said. That day, when I saw her facing me at the stop sign, I just threw my hand up and waved. She didn't give me acknowledgement. She then sped off through the stop sign. On his arrival at the Star City Firehouse, Shaun discovered that no fires had been reported in the area, so he went into the bunker room, lay down, and immediately fell asleep. Just after midday, he was awoken by a colleague saying he had a phone call. The mother of a Morgantown firefighter friend was calling to report a huge fire on Killarney Drive, a couple of doors down from his house. She had just driven past, seeing numerous fire trucks and people crying in the street. Although the fire was now out, she asked if he could drive over and find out if any neighbors had been hurt. Alt left immediately and, on the drive back, received an emotional call from his friend Reggie Hours, informing him that Jimmy Michael's house had burned down, and their mutual friend had not made it out alive. "He told me Jimmy died in a house fire," said Alt, and I said, "That's where I'm headed." Soon afterwards, he arrived to find his house blocked off by firemen and police, as the nearest fire hydrant was in his yard. Then he walked over to talk to a fire investigator who was dismantling a hose line. "That's odd," Alt told him. "You know, I smelled something burning this morning, and then I saw his wife leaving the house." Then, with nothing further he could do, Alt got back into his truck to return to the fire station. A few minutes later, he received a call from a detective on his cell phone, ordering him back to the fire scene immediately. A few minutes later, Shaun Alt was directed through a security barrier to a police cruiser, where Detective Paul Mezzanotte was waiting for him. The burly homicide detective had arrived at 545 Killarney Drive several hours earlier, after a badly burned body had been found in the second-floor master bedroom. Although it hadn't been officially identified, it was believed to be Jimmy Michael. Even though it was early in the investigation, the detective already had grave suspicions about the fire. First, the horribly charred body had been found in bed in a sleeping position, with no signs of him trying to escape. And second, the only damage to the two-story house was the totally burned-out bedroom, with the rest of it virtually untouched. Then Detective Mezzanotte had been told about Shaun Alt's claim to have seen the presumed widow leaving the house, and he wanted to know more. When the volunteer firefighter recounted seeing Shelly Michael backing out of her driveway at 8:20 a.m., Detective Mezzanotte asked how he could be certain it was her. Alt said he had known both the Michaels for many years, and had often seen Shelly's silver Ford Expedition with its distinctive six-pack vanity license plates. "I found Shelly's car and saw the license plate," recalled the detective. Everything that he had said checked out. 2 hours later, Detective Mezzanotte interviewed Shelly Michael at a neighbour's house, where she was being comforted by friends. He was immediately struck by the supposed fire victim wife's strangely calm demeanour. When asked about her husband Jimmy and what could have possibly caused the fire, she was evasive, complaining of being unwell. "I've handled a lot of death investigations," recalled the detective, "and her reaction to me wasn't of normal grieving. I don't ever remember seeing her cry. She seemed very cold and very calculated." Chapter 1. The Cheerleader. Shelly Michael was born Michelle Lynette Goots at the United Hospital Center, Clarksburg, West Virginia, on January 29, 1972, the first child of Michael and Kathy Goots. Her great-grandfather had come from a small town in Italy, emigrating to America at the beginning of the 20th century, settling in West Virginia. Nestled in the rolling hills of north-central West Virginia, Clarksburg lies where the West Fork River meets Elk Creek. Known as Jewel in the Hills, it was founded in 1785 and named for General George Rogers Clark, an American Revolutionary War hero known as the Conqueror of the Old Northwest, for forcing the British to cede the territory to America as part of the 1783 Treaty of Paris. Clarksburg's most famous son was Thomas Jonathan Stonewall Jackson, who was born there in 1824, leaving at the age of 18 to go to West Point. During the Civil War, it was an important Union Army supply depot, and the remains of Union earthworks are still on display in Lowndes Hill Park, attracting thousands of Civil War buffs each year. In the 19th and 20th centuries, Clarksburg owed its prosperity to coal mines and natural gas fields. It was a flourishing industrial and shipping centre, producing high-quality glass and metal products. But in the second half of the 20th century, the town fell into deep decline, with the population dropping from 32,000 in 1950 to just 18,000 today. Michael Goots' father, John Batista, known to everyone as J.B., was born in Clarksburg, working most of his life as manager of the Broughton Dairies. His wife Geraldine bore him 9 children, and Michael was born on November 18, 1950. A good-looking, ambitious boy, he was always fascinated by his Italian heritage, dreaming of one day seeing the old country for himself. At 16, he met Catherine Grant, who was 2 grades below him at Notre Dame High School, and they started dating. "It was love at first sight," recalled Michael. "I'm not so sure I would categorize it that way," said Kathy, "but we go a long way back." The two teenagers courted in local church coffeehouses, going dancing on the weekends. After graduating from Notre Dame, Michael went to refrigeration school, before getting a job with a local company called Wuckner Equipment. In early 1971, 18-year-old Kathy found herself pregnant, so on June 11th, the young couple were married at the Immaculate Conception Catholic Church, moving into a trailer on Chubb Run Road in Mount Clair, just outside Clarksburg. The following January, Kathy gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. They named her Michelle after her father. "She was a good baby," recalled Kathy. "I was lucky." Soon after Michelle's birth, Kathy's father, William Grant, died from alcoholism. Then Kathy, who was also now working for Wuckner Equipment, hired a babysitter to look after the new arrival. In summer 1974, Michael Goots moved his family out of the trailer to 204 Grant Street in Clarksburg, next door to his parents. He then began an extensive remodeling of the whole house. At 2 years old, Michelle, who had been dubbed Shelly Bean by an aunt, had eye surgery for strabismus, a condition where one eye cannot focus with the other. Soon afterwards, Kathy became pregnant again. On November 11, 1975, she gave birth to another daughter, who they named Jennifer. With a growing family, Michael and Kathy worked long hours to make ends meet, employing nannies and babysitters to look after their daughters. When the owner of Wuckner Equipment died, Michael Goots took over the company, renaming it Thermex Refrigeration. He appointed Kathy as office manager, officially incorporating the new company on the bicentennial. "July 4th, 1976 is the day we started," remembered Kathy. "Well, that's what we put in our business papers and everything." Over the next few years, their new company prospered. As Michael worked long hours and was on call around the clock, he rarely saw his two little girls. Shelley would later remember one of the many nannies her parents employed as being very strict, often hitting her with a paddle if she misbehaved. As her grandparents, two aunts and an uncle all lived on Grant Street, Shelley's father's house became the neighborhood hangout. Some of the little girl's earliest memories are of playing hide-and-seek and kick-the-can with her cousins. At the age of 5, Shelley started kindergarten, soon impressing her teachers with her keen natural intelligence. She was just real high-spirited, said her mother, bouncy and tomboyish, and she liked just about everything. At kindergarten, the tiny dark-haired girl became best friends with Renee Orme, whose parents were close friends of the Goots family. "We were baptized on the same day in the Immaculate Conception," said Renee. "Our first interaction was in kindergarten. That's how far back we do go." One afternoon, Shelley was walking home from kindergarten with an aunt when they saw a woman get hit by a car and thrown into the air and injured. Shelley suspected it was her mother, still lying on the ground awaiting medical help, and as her aunt led her away from the scene, she kept asking if it was her mother, but the aunt refused to answer. Later, Shelley discovered it had indeed been her mum, who spent several days in the hospital with a broken hip. On April 23, 1979, Michael and Kathy had their third child, a baby boy they named Matthew, who would complete the family. That summer, Shelley and Renee started at St. Mary's Elementary School in Clarksburg. It was part of the Catholic school system, with nuns providing a strict religious education. All the girls had to wear severe navy blue uniforms, and Shelley was embarrassed by her mother making her wear a plaid jumper with matching tie on school picture days. Years later, Kathy admits to having been a disciplinarian, imposing an 8 p.m. curfew and always expecting her children to be well behaved. She laid down strict rules to be followed at home and would punish the children if they didn't obey. "I was very, very strict," she explained. "I guess I was a little too strict, maybe." Michael, who was seldom at home, left the children's discipline to his wife. "But we had no real problems with Shelley," said Kathy. "She might lip a little, but that's about all." Shelley would later describe her parents as not very affectionate people, complaining that she rarely received hugs and kisses. She also felt that her father did not give her enough quality time, as he was so busy building his business. Shelley hated her mother's curfew, as her friends were allowed to stay out playing far later. Often, after doing her homework, Shelley would sit alone in her bedroom, playing her favourite Blondie and Michael Jackson singles over and over again on her record player. When MTV was launched in late 1981, she became addicted to watching music videos. She and her best friend Renee loved participating in the annual St. Mary's Christmas pageant and other talent shows. They once dressed up as the Go-Go's, performing their big hit that year, We Got the Beat, as well as giving several roller skating performances. It was the first time Shelly performed in front of an audience, and she loved it. At the age of 9, Shelly claims to have been sexually molested by someone close to her family, who forced her to masturbate him. It made me feel terrible inside, she later wrote. I never told anyone about it because I was too ashamed. That same year, she started cheerleading for Pop Warner, the junior football and cheerleading organization dating back to 1929. Her mother enthusiastically pushed her into cheerleading for the Clarksburg Bears junior football team. Over the next few years, she would become her daughter's biggest fan, attending every game Shelly cheered in. She really loved cheerleading, remembered Kathy Goots. It just struck her, and just stayed with it. Cheerleading soon became the most important thing in Shelly Goots' life. She loved the applause of the crowd when she backflipped across the football field, and it fulfilled a deep need she would always have, to be admired and respected. Years later, she would complain that her father was usually too busy to see her in action, writing about her excitement on the rare occasions when he did. In 1984, a Clarksburg newspaper wrote a story about Shelly and another student making it to the final of the junior high division of the individual cheerleading competition. There was a photograph of the grinning 12-year-old holding a giant pom-pom. The now yellowing clipping remains one of her most treasured possessions. In May 1985, Shelly started junior high at Notre Dame High School, where her father had gone. Renee Orme went along with her, and they both immediately tried out for the cheerleading squad. At the time, it was a requirement that cheerleaders do back handsprings, so the tenacious 13-year-old spent weeks practicing hour after hour to perfect her technique. But she kept falling on her neck and just could not get it right. She stuck at it, recalled her mother. In junior high, she wouldn't or couldn't do a back handspring, and I was working on it with her. Her cheering advisor said, "Michelle, if you can't do your back handspring, you're going to have to sit over there, and we're going to stop the practice until you do it." Eventually, Shelly mastered it, quickly learning a lot more throws and tumbling tricks. Cheerleading was my life, she later recalled. I loved everything about it. Shelly was proud to be a Notre Dame cheerleader, going along as they won several state championships. She loved being known in town as the best, delighting in wearing the squad's trademark pigtails, fondly known as Mickey Mouse ears, in their hair. That was something she was always passionate about, recalled Renee, also on the cheerleading squad. It was just something that was an important part of her. By the time Shelly joined Notre Dame High School, she was a driving force behind the cheerleading team. She modelled herself on the squad's experienced coach, Carol Morrison, who was from Kentucky. "One of my idols," Shelly later wrote. "I wanted to be just like her, a successful career woman, an excellent cheering coach, and a great mother and wife." But Shelly Goots didn't just make a name for herself cheerleading on the football field. She was also a straight-A student, and at the top of her class in science and math. She excelled academically, recalled Renee. Always great grades. It seemed to come easy to her. Shelly also found time to run track, swim, and play basketball. She was an active member of the student council, on the yearbook committee, manager of the school store, a member of the Key Club and the Spanish Club, and vice president of the National Honor Society. She did it all, remembered her sister Jennifer, who was 2 years behind her in school, and she was very popular. According to Renee Orme, Shelly never had a single enemy in high school. She had no airs about her, she said. She was just this little, tiny girl with a lot of energy. As his business prospered, Michael Goots took off alternate weekends from work to devote to his family. He would take his 3 children camping in the mountains or to the racetrack, where he competed in truck and stock car races. And they also vacationed at Virginia Beach, Niagara Falls, and amusement parks all over the East Coast. Shelly's family was loving, supportive, and tight-knit, said Renee Orme, who joined them on several vacations. On Christmas Eve, 3 generations of Gootses would gather at grandfather John Batista's house for the traditional family celebration. "We'd have a big family get-together," said Jennifer. Shelly played a big role in it. But Jennifer had problems growing up in the shadow of her overachieving older sister. "We didn't get along all that well," she admitted. "I guess there was too much sibling rivalry. Shelly's super smart, super athletic, super everything." Later, Shelly would explain that a need to excel masked feelings of deep insecurity and low self-esteem. Although she was an exceptionally pretty girl with the perfect body of an athlete, Shelly considered herself plain and unattractive. In her early teens, she developed bad acne, making her insecure around boys. "Most of my friends were very pretty," she later recalled. "I was just referred to as the nice one." Chapter 2. Only Bad Girls Do It. Kathy Goots was particularly strict with her daughter Shelly when it came to boys. Shelly was forbidden from calling them on the telephone, always told it was the boys' place to call her, and even then she could only talk on the phone for half an hour. "My mother always taught me that sex was bad," Shelly later wrote, "and only bad girls did it." Her mother also forbade her being in a car alone with a boy until she was 16. Shelly later complained that all these rules scared boys away, and believed that that was exactly what her mother had wanted. In summer 1986, Shelly Goots started dating a boy named George Lamb, considering him her first real boyfriend. They dated for a year, breaking up after she accused him of cheating. Then she had a brief relationship with another boy named Brad Skinner, but ditched him as she did not have strong feelings for him. That summer, Michael Goots bought some land at Circle Drive in Mount Clair, just south of Clarksburg, to build a new house for his family. When Kathy first saw it, she thought he was crazy, as the land was nothing more than an overgrown hillside. But Goots insisted on buying it, and once he began excavations, his vision for their new house slowly began to take shape. Every weekend, Michael, Kathy, and their 3 children moved into a trailer on the property, spending all day moving dirt, cutting down trees, and digging a pond. It would be 2 years of hard, back-breaking work until it was ready to move into. That Labor Day weekend, Shelly, now 14, went with friends to the Clarksburg Italian Heritage Festival. They were at the Sheraton Hotel when she started drinking vodka and orange juice. Eventually, she got drunk and was taken home to sleep off the effects on a couch. The next morning, her mother smelled alcohol on her breath. Although Shelly insisted she had not been drinking, her punishment was to spend all day seeding her father's property in the 90-degree heat. A few weeks later, Shelly was stopped for shoplifting at a clothes store in a local mall, but never prosecuted. She would later describe the incident as a bad joke. "I'm still ashamed of it," she later told detectives. "Friends were shoplifting from Ames, and I ended up carrying a bag out. I knew that it was shoplifting, but I went along." Everything changed for Shelly on her 16th birthday, when her parents bought her a black Ford Escort GT. Soon she was driving her friends to McDonald's or around the Notre Dame parking lot. After school, Shelly would tell her mother she was going to study in the library, but instead she and Renee drove to their boyfriend's high school to hang out together. That summer, Shelly and Renee were sunbathing at the quiet Dell Pool in Clarksburg when they met Shaun and Patrick Lance. Pretty soon, all 4 became inseparable, spending weekends at local clubs like Hammerheads and the Long Beach Inn, drinking wine coolers or beer. "We would double date together," remembered Renee. She had a couple of what you would categorize as serious boyfriends through high school. Shelly and Shaun were together 3 years, and he gave her a promise ring, pledging to marry her eventually. She loved cheering for Shaun's football team, showing off in front of his friends and family by executing perfect backflips up and down the gym floor. In March 1989, Michael Goots' dream home was finally completed, and his family moved in. His eldest daughter was now a high school senior, working as a part-time waitress to make extra money. She helped him run electric cables through the house, as well as painting and fastening drywall. That first Christmas in the new house, Michael Goots hosted the annual family celebrations, as he would do from then on. Shelly Goots turned 18 on January 29, 1990, and seemed to have everything going for her. She'd just been voted the student most likely to succeed by her classmates. In May, Shelly graduated as salutatorian with honours, with a grade point average of 3.90, and her parents were delighted. It was very good, said her mother. Of course, you've got to realise that there were about 26 people that were actually in the class, as it was a very small Catholic school, but she was still salutatorian. At her senior prom, Shelley's date had a bet with friends that he could have sex with her that night. Later she discovered the wager, writing that she was so proud and thankful that she had stuck to her principles and only allowed him to kiss her. After she graduated, Shelly found a summer job as a cashier, as she and Renee began applying to several universities. The two friends were accepted by 4 of them, and opted to attend Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. But just before their first semester, they decided Ohio was too far away from their parents, instead choosing West Virginia University, WVU, in Morgantown, just 34 miles northeast of Clarksburg. Several days before she was due to leave for Morgantown, Shelley's beloved grandfather, John B. Goots, died after a stroke and complications from diabetes and heart disease. Shelly, who had always been close to him, was devastated. That was especially bad, remembered her mother. The day she was leaving to go to school was the day we had the funeral. Chapter 3. West Virginia University. It would take Shelly Goots a long time to feel comfortable in Morgantown, a town twice as big as Clarksburg with its sprawling WVU campus. Morgantown was first settled in 1772 by Colonel Zachary Morgan, the son of Colonel Morgan, reputed to have been the first white settler in the region, later to become West Virginia. In 1785, the Virginia Assembly chartered the territory along the banks of the beautiful Monongalia River, holding a lot sale, and Colonel Morgan, who had valiantly fought against the British in the American Revolutionary War, was awarded the charter to establish 50 acres in the eponymous Morgantown. In February 1838, the town was incorporated and renamed Morgantown. A quarter of a century later, it became part of the newly created state of West Virginia. West Virginia University was founded in 1867 as an all-male institution, with just 6 faculty members and 6 students. At that time, WVU tuition was only $8 per term, as well as $3.50 a week board and lodging. Over the next 20 years, WVU grew rapidly, and in September 1889, the first 10 women were accepted on campus. By the 1920s, WVU had become one of the preeminent colleges in the South. The Mountaineer athletic legacy dates back to fall 1891, when a group of WVU students took on a team from Washington and Jefferson College, Pittsburgh, in the newly invented game of football. The match was played in a cow pasture outside Morgantown. Over the years, the Mountaineers have included many other sports like baseball, basketball, soccer and wrestling. The old gold and blue, WVU official school colours, and the distinctive Mountaineer logo are common sights in Morgantown. College life revolved around the Mountaineer football team, and freshmen had to run around Mountaineer Field in a group before every game, compulsory to attend. In recent times, the Mountaineers football team has had one of the best records in the Northeast Conference. In 1986, Mountaineer Field was expanded to 63,175 seats. 2 years later, the Mountaineers had their first ever undefeated season, culminating in a win over the University of Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl. When Shelly Goots arrived in Morgantown, she set her sights on becoming a WVU cheerleader, but it would take almost a year before she got the call. In their freshman year, Shelly and Renee roomed together at the Arnold Hall dormitory on Price Street. Shelly was majoring in pre-pharmacy and Renee in business. It was an exciting time for the two childhood friends, and they enthusiastically threw themselves into WVU college life. It was the first time we had been away from home, remembered Renee. We would go out and have a good time, as any 18-year-olds would. It was a fun place to be. Shelly remembers that first year as amazing, boasting that, although she partied a lot, she still managed a 4.0 grade point average. But her mother remembers Shelley's freshman year slightly differently. She was just lost, said Kathy Goots. She went from a class of 20 students.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?